Welcome to another episode of A Come Together. Oh, we're live. I didn't realize I was live. Hey, everyone. We are back with another episode. Solo episode today. First one in a while, so I'm back. Cheers. A bit of smoky scotch, some ice after what feels like impossibly long day, but here we are. And I gotta say, I never really thought that the hardest part of the podcast would be getting people to just stick on schedule in terms of planning and timing and dates and recording times and stuff like that. Which, all things considered, there could be a lot more complicated and difficult parts of the podcast, but things have been absolutely bonkers beyond words in terms of busyness. School started up again. And so on top of the podcast and on top of being home with two kids under 3 and the sales job and exercising every day, I'm back to teaching for 2.5 hours, grading papers and coming up with lessons again. 9th, 10th, and 12th graders this year, which is really cool. And again, it never ceases to amaze me, but every year, this is the 4th year in a row, my students take me by surprise. And just when I think that I don't want to teach younger classes, 9th and 10th grade have been really, truly awesome. Smart, good, sweet, creative kids. They might be listening right now. They found out about the podcast. It came up in conversation, I guess, and I told them that rather than not listen to it, in case you're listening, because I think that I have a responsibility as a teacher to keep classroom conduct, and then there is my own time, my own space, my own life, and that's separate. Which I guess that would be the opening point. I love the circle back and the references and the closing out the podcast with circling back to that first topic. So I'll probably end up circling back and talking about a little bit of my thoughts on this Jimmy Kimmel lunatic nightmare that seems to be going on right now. And not to say I haven't even decided whether whether I'm for him getting fired or not. But I guess I just have some thoughts that I'm sure I'd flesh out. But yeah, I think that now is a little bit it's a little crazy. It's a little crazy. Life's been a little high pressure. Like life's been a little busy, more than a little busy, and it kind of feels like I never even have 2 seconds to stop and breathe and be, you know. And I try to make and I make time almost every day too. I think that my schedule in general is just so packed that even if I make some time for the day to unwind or exercise or whatever, it doesn't compensate for the need to just be still for a little bit and let my head settle and let my thoughts settle. And for the first time in literally years, probably, but literally years, I was driving for probably 20, 30 minutes and I didn't put any radio on. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even look at my phone. I just, which I shouldn't be doing anyway, but I just drove in silence and just my thoughts in my head and the windows down. And, this time of year in South Florida, uh, the summer heat kind of comes a culmination of humidity and storm and rain, and that's actually when hurricane season tends to happen, if it does at all, on an annual basis. Right before, and then all the rain and storms happen, and then there's a break in the humidity, and then winter happens, and that's the best part of being down here for sure. Even though summer this year happened to have been pretty tolerable, pretty bearable. I thought when I was in New York for half the summer that it was really just as bad, if not worse, in a little bit of a different way. But yeah, so I needed to start just being, just to spend some time in a healthy place and to have some time having fun, which is something that it's crazy to say, but you have to really schedule it in your adult life as you become an adult, because even because our attention and our eyeballs are constantly being fought over, whether, I guess not necessarily even our eyeballs, our ears too, but there's always something happening and urgent that just requires your attention, whether that's a new show that came out, or whether that's a new news story that broke on Twitter, or whether it's a new podcast that you absolutely have to listen to. you know there's very little time, I guess for me, that I really have for just like fun. And by the time, and obviously a lot of my fun time is playing with my son and playing with my daughter, but and hanging out with my wife, but fun in my own self-expressive kind of fun way. There's a famous Calvin Hobbes where Calvin asked his dad, how come adults don't, there's something about like, playing and whatever. And he goes, yeah, well, when you're an adult, it's not allowed anymore. So you may as well enjoy it now, and it kind of feels like that, even though I know it's not the case, because it's really just up to me. But so I guess about a month or two ago, I made more now. Holy cow! I don't know. Time's flying. But I made a friend. I went to an open mic, and I see a guy that looks Israeli. It's just a very distinct Israeli type of look. And then I saw he had a Hebrew word tattooed on, I think his neck or shoulder, um, and a Hamsa tattoo. And I was like, oh man, this guy's definitely Jewish. Probably. I mean, I've seen Jewish people with Jewish tattoos as well, I guess. But so we kind of make eye contact, give each other like a little like "what's up," and after I went to play, I went outside, have a drink, take a smoke, and he was outside too, and we started talking. He was with his wife, and we all started talking. And then right before I was about to leave, he came dashing outside. He's like, "Oh, let me just grab your number," which I'm kind of happy that he did, right? Because it kind of felt like we both were like on a similar page as to. I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this. Anyone listening, literally, there's just people that you meet where like you kind of just have some good vibes and good chemistry when you meet each other, and you can either let that kind of go or you could do something about it. And I'm usually the kind of guy to let it go. I'm bad at two things. I'm bad at a lot more than two things, but two social things in this context that I'm bad at is getting people's phone numbers, saying, "Hey, what's your phone number?" Which I've been really working on. And then just like it's not, I have to get over that in my head, and also starting conversations, initiating conversations. So I will say that I initiated the conversation just for my own, just to make myself feel better. But he came running after me. He's like, "Hey, let me get your phone number. We should hang out sometime, or like, at least come back to open mic together and see if we could, just to have someone to hang out with," because this was one of his first times doing it too. I've been doing it for a while, and he's a far better guitar player than I am, but I mean, there's the performance. There's a reason why performing is an art, or why it's a whole other skill, and it's hard. It's definitely hard. You're making yourself vulnerable on stage. If you're not 100% secure, then everything that you're insecure about seems to be amplified way more when you're in front of people, even if it's just a few people. Just like you're sitting you're standing or sitting on a stool or on a whatever in front of a microphone. I know I don't have a particularly great voice. I don't know how I even sound. I can't even tell when I'm sitting up there what my guitar sounds like. I literally have no idea how I'm playing when I when I play in open mics, and I could only base it on how I feel about how smooth or loose or organic my playing sounds, or my voice and how tight and stiff and my voice sounds. Because when you get nervous, or at least when I get nervous, I tend to speak faster, and when I'm singing, my voice kind of tenses up, and you can really sense the strain. So, we both, so neither of us are, I guess, well, he's a better performer than I am. I'm a little bit more comfortable, I would say, at this point, because I've been, I mean, I've done probably 2 or 3 dozen open mics at this point, even though I'm still not entirely comfortable. And So he came to me, so we kind of been in touch every now and then, and it's a great way to practice my Hebrew, which I really love doing, and it's a great way to, and to practice casual Hebrew, because I come across biblical, or I guess ancient Hebrew, a lot more frequently on a daily basis, and I used to speak more, I guess, modern day Hebrew with my grandfather, who had passed away a couple of years ago, and with my mom sometimes. But short of that, there's not a lot of Hebrew going on in my life, and it's fun to practice it. It also makes me feel like I'm kind of half on vacation, and I really believe that there's also another part of our brain when we switch languages. We shift the gears in our head in the way that we think, and our perception, and our even our mood. Like, I've noticed that when I talk to people in Hebrew, I just, the flow in my state of mind is totally different than speaking in English. And obviously, if you're not, and if you do speak more than one language, and there's one language that you're more comfortable than the other, like Hebrew, like I'm more comfortable obviously speaking English than Hebrew. I have to spend a decent amount of time actually working hard to even make the most casual conversation, because all the words that I'm thinking of, that I want to communicate or express, I have to translate over in real time, and it happens quickly, but it definitely has some kind of cognitive cost, in the sense that, you're exerting power, you're exerting effort to really just have the most basic of conversations, and the more frequently that I talk in that language, the less effort it requires. So it's fun to so it's fun to kind of be in touch with them a little bit, and you know and we're both, and so we're both very creative, very passionate about music and self-expression. I believe, or from what I've been able to deduce from hanging out and texting and talking and whatever. And last week we went to an open mic together, and it was great. It was my first open mic in probably 6 months. It was his second, I think, second or third ever. And he did great. I played a couple of songs. The first song I played was "If You Want to Sing Out" by Cat Stevens, and even though that's a song I was probably most comfortable playing out of the three that I played, I bombed it so hard. I just felt wooden and tight, and my voice was bad, and my guitar singing was bad, and my rhythm was off, and everything just felt clunky. And then I got to a song called "Cold Cold World." I've been listening to a good amount of Billy Strings lately, and he has this album called "Live at the Legion," which I think I may have said this on the podcast before, but Billy Strings and Brian Sutton, Live at the Legion, they're actually they're touring together now, or they just played a back-to-back set of shows in, I believe, Nashville. But they're both just incredible guitar players, and when they play together, they take a lot of old classic American folk, blues, bluegrass, country tunes, and cover them, but with the magic. What's so much fun about covers, and the reason why you see so many covers with great musicians is because you have a lot of your own voice and your creativity and your own style, and you're taking something that was already so good in of itself, and you're kind of blending the two. That's why I always loved. I loved Springsteen covers. I thought he did a remarkable job taking songs and really adding a great little, like, rock, not little, but great rock and emotional, I guess, tone to them. The Grateful Dead, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm sure I'll say it again and again. Started as a cover band, and all they played was just songs that they loved, and they just had their own style of expressing themselves. And Billy Strings too is a bluegrass acoustic guitar player, but he can play. He crosses genres all the time, and does incredible covers. So there's a great song by a guy named Blaze Foley, uh, Texas kind of guy, and if you haven't heard his music, it's really, really awesome. The particular song I played was called "Cold Cold World," but Blaze Foley has Blaze Foley, Foley, has a bunch of amazing live and recorded albums that was just like great acoustic guitar. Just, you could tell that it was just almost like dripping with this country energy. country vibe. And I mean, I think he's from Texas, but I don't want to speak without knowing for sure. I'm literally just starting to look into him. But so I played this song called "Cold Cold World," and then "Don't Think Twice, It's All Right" is a Bob Dylan classic. But I've been practicing. When you play guitar, you can either strum one time down, or you can kind of pick and kind of play each string and let each sound kind of come to life. And it's a totally different vibe, and they're both great sounds, but they kind of create different environments and atmospheres. So I played a little slower down version of that than I usually play. I usually played in a 2/4 waltz time, and instead I played it this time just as a very slow arpeggio, something like that. Um, but yeah, and then so that was last week, and we had a great time. And this week he texted me, he's like, "Hey man, like, if you want to go to open mic, we go to open mic, but I would love to just jam together and maybe just play some originals, show each other some originals, hang out. I have my I have a we can hang out in the backyard, have a good time, and just talk." And I came back and I was so tired from the whole day. Again, the schedule from, waking up, I've been rarely sleeping through the night because of my kids. But, you wake up, work out first thing, pray, work, find podcast guests, maybe record an episode, continue working, run to afternoon prayers, mincha is what it's called in Hebrew. Come home, realize in a panic that I don't have a class ready yet for today, or the class that I thought I had ready wasn't good enough, or the students didn't like the one that I did yesterday, so I have to change up what I was going to do, and I only have an hour to do it, and all of a sudden, oh my God, I got to hustle, so I got to make, and then I got to go and I got to teach for the time. Then I come home and put my kid to bed, and I was about to bail on him, and I was like, no, man, I just need to do this. I need to go. I need to hang out with someone. And someone that it's not even just hanging out with someone, it's someone that is looking to share creatively and literally just like have fun. um and I was like, I'm going to push myself. I got to just go do it, even if I'm falling on my face. And I did. And it was so wonderful. And the reason why I feel why I'm even talking about this is because I know that I've been preaching or talking a lot about the value of embodied experiences and doing things with people. And an embodied experience could be a sports game, could be a bar, could be a brewery, could be a movie, could be a jiu-jitsu class, a workout class, Pilates, whatever you want to do. Um, but there's something, I think, really unique and cool and fun about making, the early process of making a new friend, or getting to know someone for the first time again, or getting to know a friend for the first time, because with a lot of people in our lives, I'm sure that that you can relate, but we already have an image of ourselves. They have an image of us, and we have an image of our relationship, of what we're supposed to be, the way we're supposed to act. And we kind of feel like, based on who we're hanging out with, we have to we have to fill those we have to fill those expectations, and we have to meet them. And I think that's why people really, really feel like when they escape, obviously aside from a therapist, which is super important, um, barbers, are people that everyone just loves talking to, or a bartender, or someone that like is in front of you, where you guys have no prior history. You can be any person that you pretend to, that you want to be, or that you really are, and that you feel like you can't ordinarily be, or you can pretend to be someone new. And I mean, I don't pretend to be someone new. I think it's a little psychotic every time, but I think that so I have friends with my relationship to them is I'm the goofy dude, and there's some friends my relationship with them is I'm this thoughtful guy that we share ideas and books that we've read together, and philosophical ideas about religion and life and God. And then there's some friends that that I work out with and that I'm an athlete with, and there's some and so with I haven't had any friends at this point in my life, at least, that I became that I identify myself with in our relationship with, as a musical partnership. And it's so cool and unique. And I actually think that one of the things that I guess I'm really thinking these words for the first time in my life, but one of the benefits and values when people say of moving is like when you move, you change your luck and you change, your circumstance, is that you really do get to reinvent yourself. And a lot of times, especially with people that we've known for a long time, when life is always moving, life is always changing, things are always happening, our interests are always evolving and developing, and people that know you in a certain way at a certain point, we almost kind of feel boxed in to the way that we have to act. You feel like we're boxed into the association that we have with, and there might be another part of us that never actually gets to flourish and get to breathe and get to really express itself and really embody itself in our lives. And that's one of the amazing benefits of creating friends, of going out of your way to meet people, of going out of your way to talk to your barber or talk to a bartender or talk to to a gym coach, to anyone, just the notion that like there's I'm sure that we all, I know for myself obviously, but I'm sure for all of us there's parts of ourselves that we really want to access more, that we wish we could just manifest and bring out more in our lives. And when we don't, it either feels locked up and, it sucks. That's a really bad feeling to have things held back in like that. Or it suffocates and dies and just goes away. So I ended up feeling far more free, that night. And we played a couple of covers, we played some original songs that, I haven't played in years or for anyone else before, not for a long time. And we talked about the backgrounds of the stories. We talked about different points in our lives. Talking about different concerts that we went to, or people we'd like to see, or things we want to do. And it was just like 2 hours or 2.5 hours of really just this freedom of me expressing myself in a way that I don't almost that for the first time in my life, because I almost never ever really express myself as the guy that's a musician, the guy that plays guitar, the guy that has is learning about it and practicing and playing and being creative and finding his own voice with it, and and crossing over genres and trying to figure out where exactly my sound is. And it was such a magnificent experience. And I came home and and on the way home I just felt so light, and like the weight of the world had just been just moved off me for just a little bit. And there's something that I think that I wish that first of all, that I had on a more regular basis, but that I really want for more people to have, because that feeling of liberation and that feeling of this is who I can be more than what I am, and I can be my I can my life could be more than just the general trajectory that it's on right now, is such an invigorating feeling that it just brings a whole new level of life and awareness. I think that was really, really necessary for me to make it through, to make it through the world, man. I think that I think everyone has a tough life. I think everyone goes through hard times, and I think everyone needs healthy ways to be able to express to go through it, to make their way through. There's healthy ways and unhealthy ways, and for a long time, it's easy to numb. It's easy to to shove these feelings down, or hide them away, or force them into the pit of your stomach, or somewhere else, or even try to work it out, like to try to force it away by working out, or casting it far off into your subconscious. But it can't be that far off, and it's always on the surface, whether we're aware of it or not. So that was one thing. The other thing that I think that I was thinking a lot about for today, I had a friend. I have a friend, Shua, friend of the podcast. Pretty frequent guest, I would say. I think he's been on 3 or 4 times, although only once, I think, by himself. But so I get, and this is a Jewish concept that I want to elaborate on, but I think that is philosophically, intellectually, and as far as education and values goes, is something that's really, really worthwhile and worth thinking about and talking about. Um, so You have, especially in Judaism, you got the you got the oral law, you got the written law. The written law is obviously very famous as the Old Testament or the Bible or the Torah, whatever you want to call it. And then the oral law is what's called in Hebrew Torah Sheba'al Peh. So it means the instructions that were delivered from the mouth, or through speech. And at a certain point in Jewish history, Jews were forgetting the oral law, and even though it was originally meant to never be written down, out of fear of potentially losing it, we did write it down. And we didn't write the whole thing down. We would write clues and hints and very esoteric, I would say, conversations that it's so fascinating, because if you look at most of the oral law, most of the Talmud is what you'd call it, the Talmud or the Gemara, it's broken up into several different volumes and several different books, and ranging from category to category. And they're all cross-referenced, and they're all relating to each other, which in and of itself is really magical and amazing. But it was written with the intention that to constantly revisit it. And the metaphor that I love to give, and that I believe I've said before, but if not, I'll say again, is the equivalent, especially from my teaching perspective. We have things we talk about in class, and then we have the homework that I give, and then you have the assignments that I give, and then you have the textbook, or the source material. And if you're a student in my class, and then I ask you a question, a lot of times I'm not asking you a question based on one specific thing. There's several different aspects, or avenues of information that I'm including in my one question. If I say, what do you think of the song "Father and Son" by Cat Stevens? Because you learned about that song in class. Or today we did "Me and My Uncle" by the Grateful Dead. And excuse me. And I say, what's happening in that? You can try and just read the lyrics of the song, but you won't realize, if you weren't paying attention to what we're talking about, you won't get what I was trying to tell you. We looked at the mapping class, and so for example, the song "Me and My Uncle" opens, "Me and my uncle went riding down from South Colorado, West Texas bound." Where's West Texas? Where's South Colorado? Are they close to each other? We stopped over in Santa Fe. It was about halfway, and you look at the map and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And then you say, okay, well, this song is meant to be a cowboy song. And so where this guy's coming from is relevant. So while we're doing this, while we're listening to the song and while we're following the lyrics, I pull up a map, and we're looking at the map. We're saying, look, this guy's not some naive young kid, the protagonist in the song. This guy's already in the West. He's coming from the West. So it's more of an interaction between two cowboys rather than one quote unquote civilian and one cowboy, or one city boy and one cowboy. And so now when I ask you about the song, I'm not just asking you about the song. I'm asking you about the geography that the song references to. I'm asking you about the characters. I'm asking you about what we talked about in class and how it relates to American culture, what the Western expansion was like. It references the Grateful Dead. And who were they to sing that? What did they enjoy about it? Where were they based? What's going on over there? So, excuse me. So all this is to say that when you have the Talmud, and then you have a sentence, or you have a line, or you have a quote, or you have a conversation, a debate, or it's called in Hebrew machloket, which means, I guess, a breaking down of. It literally means to break down points and argue, which is probably the way the argument. And I mean, and I don't even know if this is true. I've always heard growing up in the Orthodox Jewish world that apparently lawyers helps. The Talmud helps you become, a lawyer, because it helps you think a certain way. And lawyers sometimes study the Talmud, and I'm sure there's truth to that. I don't know, whether that's like a universal truth or not, but I believe it. I believe it because there's no word that can't be flipped over, dozens of times, that can't be cross-referenced, that can't be, talking about, several different contexts all in one go, right? And and I'm pretty confident saying that, you know, most Orthodox or observant Jews would say that, but that studying Talmud or Bible or the oral law is a pretty significant part of their relationship to the Judaism. It's not just the Old Testament and the written book. It's also the way to understand the written books and the oral law that kind of contextualizes everything, even though that in and of itself also needs context, right? Um, so all this is to say that what happens in order to encourage, I would imagine that in order to encourage, I don't know for certain, but I would imagine in order to encourage this, you make something called the siyum or some little like celebration whenever you finish a designated portion of it. So, you know, the Talmud is divided into different sections that, you know, are different aspects of life that it's pertaining to, you know, holidays or laws of damages or laws of relationships or laws of personality. And then, um, and then within those broader categories, you have several different volumes of books. And each book could, you know, ranges from generally like 15, 20 pages of information of written conversation or written text to, you know, dozens. It gets pretty meaty, pretty big. And what you do at the end though is when you finish a book, you know you make a you finish one of the books, you make a party, you make what's called a siyum, and you have a meal, and you're supposed to invite at least 10 men, and it's considered a celebration. And you're supposed to have some wine. You're supposed to have some meat or some bread. And one of the and what and the point that I'm trying to get to with talking about this concept is that the very first words that come out of your mouth is, "I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to come back to reviewing you again." Meaning, just because I read this book one time does not mean that I have the ultimate, you know, master. I'm not a master of the knowledge written in this book. And even though I'm celebrating that I've taken a step along the way to understand the context of this book and understand the context of the bigger Jewish perspective and philosophy, I still have to go back and do it again. Because you know what? I understand things totally differently when I'm 29 than when I was 19. I understand things completely differently when I was 25 compared to when I was 29. And so if I were to consume information, if I were to read The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand as a 14-year-old, and then I read it again as a 25-year-old, just graduating college, or sorry, 22-year-old, just graduating college and trying to figure out what to do with my life, it's going to have massively different implications and impacts on me. And what's amazing about, I mean, and what I guess a lot of these type of materials discuss, the religious texts and materials, are ways to navigate the different stages of our lives and different sets of reality that we go through. Because let me tell you something, the lens that I look at reality through right now in my life is totally different than any other way that I've ever looked through it before. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think personally that it's evolved, of course, but I'm kind of inclined to say that about myself. But you know, it definitely feels like it evolved. And I think that's really awesome. I think that we kind of have to treat more aspects of information in our lives like that. You know, we feel like you're done with high school, or you're done with college. Oh, I read that book already, or I did that already, and I'm guilty of this all the time myself. I saw this already, so I don't give a, you know, I don't care. What was you know, actually a great example was one of my favorite movies ever was, or at least nowadays, was Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And when I first watched that movie, I didn't know the whole Charles Manson story. And so I didn't get what was going on. I didn't get that this. I didn't get the hippie movement. I didn't get the girl with the armpits. I with the armpit hair. I didn't get, you know, what that the that these hippies were in some kind of evil death cult that were getting hoodwinked by Manson and or whatever it was. Even if they weren't hoodwinked, they were, you know, getting drugged by Manson and starting this cult. And so I watched the movie. I'm like, whatever. And then I was like, I wonder who Charles Manson is. And I listened to a couple of podcasts that, you know, kind of talked about his life a little bit. And then I was like, oh, whoa. And then I went back to the movie again after a couple of months of just casual reading and looking into it. And I watched the movie and I'm like, this movie is perfect. This movie's so good. And I couldn't get over it. And I was like, this is so silly. The only point, so my point being that if there's, information kind of stays the same, I would say, but we are always developing and we're always changing. And I think it's really, really important to take the time to realize that just because we consume something when we were, even a couple of years ago, and we had a perspective on it, to look back on it and be able to say, I'm going to try this again, and I'm going to keep it an open mind because my life is different now than it was, and the way I think now is different, and my associations and my exposures are different now than they ever were before. You know, so yeah, I got to relook at it. And yeah, listen, if it didn't speak to you, it might not still speak to you. If it did speak to you, it might not anymore. A lot of Springsteen's music, which meant the entire world to me for so long, so many years of my life, probably 6 years of my life, was just like Springsteen was like the way that he would like my emotional guiding star, like the way that he would like manifest and describe the feelings of loneliness or meaning or happiness or hope or betrayal or heartbreak or enthusiasm and excitement and passion for life. The way that he manifested all of that, I felt so strongly as like a young single guy trying to figure out what I was trying to do with my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. I didn't know what my passions were. I didn't know what kind of girl I wanted to marry, what kind of family I wanted to have. I didn't know where I wanted to live. I didn't know I wanted to figure it out, and I knew I felt lost. And and he gave that to me. And he helped me navigate that. But it doesn't mean this, it doesn't speak to me the same way now when I have projects in a career that I'm working on. I have a family that I'm building, and I know where I bought a house. I know where I'm living. And all of a sudden, a lot of the context in my life that made Springsteen speak so clearly and so rings so true to me for so many years. He's still just as talented as he was. He didn't stop being one of the greatest singer-songwriters and performers in American history just because I don't understand, just because I don't relate to it in the same way. But I fundamentally changed, and all of a sudden, I relate a little bit more to, a little bit more of a different type of genre, a different type of musician, or a different type of conversation. And maybe my conversations a little bit, maybe what I'm relating to is more on, I'm just trying to, I'm swamped, and I'm trying to find a way to enjoy all the moments in the chaos that I have in my life and find people who manifest that idea, the idea of exhaustion, but still wanting to fight on, the feeling of excited to build something new, the feeling of creativity, and the feeling of finding something fun for the news for the first time, or really making a breakthrough on something for the first time. So all this is to say that this concept, this Jewish concept of a siyum, of this commitment, not just to learning new information and processing information, but also a commitment to revisiting it as we go through our lives. I don't think, obviously, obviously it does apply to Judaism, at least for me, but it could apply to everyone for literally anything. And I think that we'd all be doing ourselves a bigger favor, a huge favor, if we're able to really just keep an open mind and understand that just because something didn't speak to us once before doesn't mean it never will again. Um, anyway, um, Jimmy Kimmel got fired for, or what was it, indefinitely suspended, which doesn't sound too good. If I was indefinitely suspended, I wouldn't be thrilled. And um, I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this. We're just coming out of 15 years of cancel culture. And I don't even think I heard what Jimmy Kimmel said. I'm not even going to pretend to, be a fan of it or not. I don't actually know almost anything about Jimmy Kimmel. I've only heard his name in the last couple of years. and nothing I've ever heard from him was particularly funny. My understanding, what I've heard, is that he was actually, funnier, prior to the whole woke era. Um, but he's not now, and he apparently got canceled for, so he got fired for, or Disney said, or ABC said that they're suspending his show after some insensitive remarks about Charlie Kirk and the MAGA movement and whatever it was. And I don't have too many thoughts on this. I'm actually extremely, extremely disappointed. So disappointed in the people in the administration right now, the Trump administration, for trying to crack down and have government censorship when it comes to speech. Obviously, other than inciting violence or whatever doesn't, whatever's not included in the First Amendment, rather. But we just went through this for so long, for so many years, right? I don't think that the Trump administration or any government administration should tell a talk show host or a late night show host or anyone anyone in any kind of private industry what to do with their employees. And by the way, on the other hand, if Disney decided on their own or ABC decided on their own, hey man, that was a really not, I didn't even know what he said, but hey man, that was a really not cool thing to say. And, I really don't think that you're the kind of right fit that we want to have in our environment. Obviously, we know that Disney does not have such moral quandaries, and such internal debate. All they care about is obviously making sure that the current administration in power likes them enough to allow them to keep on making money and not give them a hard time and not affect the bottom line, which I get and is totally fair. But still, end of the day, like I don't think that it's considered getting canceled if you're fired for saying something stupid. I think that if there's almost like a systematic conjoined effort to make sure that not only you're fired but you can never get another job again, I think that might be something else, and that might be another conversation to have. But I don't know. I kind of feel like it's in everyone's right. If I was working with someone and they started celebrating Charlie Kirk dying, getting not dying, I'm sorry, getting murdered, getting executed in broad daylight in front of thousands of people. I'm sorry to put it dying the first way. He was executed and murdered in front of thousands of people. And someone was celebrating that, I'd be like, hey man, I don't want to work with you. And I'm entitled to say I don't want to work with you, man. Like, that's really, really not cool. And like, are you allowed free speech? Sure. Say whatever you want. I don't want you in my business. I don't want you working for me. I don't want you working with me. I don't have to give you my business. And I think that if Disney, and obviously Disney's not saying this out of some kind of like moral high ground or some kind of emotional place where they cared so much about who Charlie Kirk was, they're again protecting themselves. But I think I mean, it's been so crazy going on social media and seeing on Variety how explosive the response to Jimmy Kimmel getting fired is, when we literally, I mean, think about everyone that got canceled over the last 10, 15 years. Think about everyone that lost a job, that lost every actor, every writer, every person on social media at home that was just minding their own business and just said something in their own time. And again, if a company, if a private company feels that they don't want to work with that person, they don't have to work with that person. It should go both ways, right? And just like I believe that government censorship should not be allowed. I was really, really done quite, quite. What's the word for it? When it's like so out there, so blatantly by the Biden administration, we don't want to set this precedent that no matter who's in power, they're just going to be silencing other voices and deporting people because of things that they say or things that they believe. And I mean, that's playing the same game, and you're falling to the same shtick. And I know that power is enticing, but it also shows I've been a little de-enfranchised with the system. I really thought that there was going to be change. I really thought there's going to be, change in American society and American culture. And I mean, even, and I have to say this because I think it's really important. Even all this Israel stuff, where people are trying to silence people that are critics of Israel, it doesn't help. It does not help. Engage in the conversation. Engage in the argument. Don't get someone deported because they say free Palestine. Don't fire someone because they say that Israel's committing a genocide. Have a conversation. By the way, again, you could fire them if it's a private business. Do your thing. Don't have the government come after you. Don't have ICE knocking on your door. Don't have the Trump. Don't have the FBI. Break into your house for a meme that you sent. Come on. I feel like we're better than that. And even though I feel that way, at the moment it doesn't look like that. I guess the only positive thing that I could say about it is that there's been an enormous amount of right leaning people pushing back on some of the exact things that we're talking about now. And I forgot. I think it was Dave Smith, and I know I know that right now invoking his name will cause a rather vitriolic reaction, and that's okay. But I think that I think the guy's entitled to his opinion. I think he's, I don't agree with him about Israel specifically, even though a lot of the things that he says, I can understand where he's coming from. But I think that he's really smart with a lot of different things, and he's super, super articulate and eloquent, and a really, really dynamic and smart guy. Um, he's like, you're gonna see this is gonna be used to just clamp down on free speech, like Charlie Kirk's death. Charlie Kirk, the guy that wanted free speech, that wanted conversation, that wanted to welcome anyone to have any kind of point of view that they had, and we'll talk about it. In his name, free speech is getting shut down. He's like, you'll see, they all end up the same. And unfortunately, I guess it looks that way. I guess we'll call it there for the night. This was good. I haven't done a solo episode in months, so this was fun. Uh, as always, any feedback, feel free to reach out. Gonna have some more guests for you coming up. And as always, love you all and have a good night. Bye.